Late around evening time in Ohio, Rose and her significant other Christopher are searching for their took-on little girl, who slips away the house at whatever point she has bad dreams and sleepwalks. Rose goes through the backwoods and under a scaffold to track down Sharon on the edge of a precipice. Sharon peers down and has a dream of a consuming spot with a young lady inside that makes her murmur home. Before she can hop, Rose handles her to the ground. Simultaneously, Christopher nearly gets hit by a vehicle when he goes across the street to join his loved ones. Sharon continues wriggling on the ground, rehashing the words home and quiet slope like each time she has these episodes. The following day, Rose lets Sharon know that she'll take her to Quiet Slope to attempt to settle her issues, despite the fact that Sharon always forgets what she said while sleepwalking. Some other time when Christopher returns home from work, he continues to call Rose, however she won't get. Anyway, he tracks down her quest for Quiet Slope on the PC, discovering that it's a spooky town in West Virginia and it's brimming with underground fire. That evening, Rose stops at a service station and notification that Sharon's drawings have changed from charming into terrible things, including a peculiarly molded cross. Rose gets some information about it and the young lady blows a gasket since she doesn't recollect getting it done. As Rose quiets her down, official Sybil observes close by. At the point when Rose goes inside to pay, she requests bearings to Quiet Slope and the representative says the street doesn't arrive at that town any longer. She likewise tells Rose that her card was declined. Rose quickly calls Christopher, who affirms he impeded the cards and says Sharon will be better at a clinic with medicine. Rose simply calls attention to that prescription never worked and hangs up. Outside, Sybil approaches Sharon to really take a look at she's fine, yet Sharon knows to overlook outsiders. At that point, Rose returns and drives away. Minutes after the fact, out and about, Sybil attempts to make Rose pull over. Originally, Rose stops the vehicle, but she sees a sign denoting the way to Quiet Slope and chooses to accelerate to escape from Sybil. There's a wall impeding the scaffold, however Rose simply passes through it to continue onward. As they approach a hazy region, the radio beginning shrieking with static and Sharon shouts in torment as she covers her ears. Unexpectedly, a young lady shows up in the center of the street and Rose needs to turn the vehicle to evade, making the vehicle get away and crash. At the point when Rose awakens, she finds Sharon is absent and that she's on the edges of Quiet Slope, where the mist is significantly thicker and it's continually coming down debris. Hollering her girl's name, Rose runs not too far off and enters the town, which is by all accounts vacant. She sees a little figure running by and Rose follows her into a dim rear entryway. Simultaneously, an alarm begins crying through town. A weighty haziness assumes control over the rear entryway and Rose takes out her lighter, which doesn't help a lot. She hears a voice murmuring "Mom" and continues to look until she sees as an unwanted cot. Somebody moves again close by and Rose follows once more, however she freezes when she finds a mangled individual wearing mining gear and held tight the wall by wires that cause it to drain all around the floor. Unexpectedly, a beast called Dim Youngster shows up behind her and sparkles when it attempts to contact her. A shouting Rose takes off as additional dark youngsters appear, however she tracks down the way impeded by the wall. The Dim Youngsters before long encompass her and detach her coat as they attempt to hurt her. Ultimately, Rose tracks down an exit and pushes away to enter a structure, but she trips and the youngsters encompass her once more, attempting to snatch all her from moving. Rose hollers in dread and the youngsters begin breaking down as she drops. Minutes after the fact, Rose awakens inside an unwanted bowling alley where music is playing. She promptly runs out and attempts to leave the town, just to find a pit of mist removing the street. Out of nowhere, Dahlia shows up behind her, making sense of just the dull one can give individuals access or out of Quiet Slope. She likewise shares that she had a girl called Alessa, yet she lost her later. They made horrendous things to her. At the point when Rose shows her an image of Sharon, Dahlia says that is her youngster and attempts to take the memento. Rose needs to push her off to have the option to take off. In the meantime, Christopher is attempting to follow Rose's course and asks a man at the corner store for headings. The man makes sense of that Quiet Slope is deterred on the grounds that the mines are as yet consuming underground, so Christopher needs to pay off him to get legitimate headings. Back to Rose, she figures out how to find her vehicle and one of Sharon's drawings, which shows a school. The vehicle won't begin, so Rose calls Christopher and leaves a message on his voice message. At that point, Sybil appears and captures Rose. Then, at that point, she has a go at reaching her station, however her radio isn't working. Rose sees the cop is draining, so Sybil makes sense of she likewise crashed and awakened here. Meanwhile, Christopher continues driving while at the same time paying attention to Rose's message, which is generally static. At last he finds the wall that Rose passed through and a lot of police hindering the scaffold. He makes sense of the circumstance and reviewer Thomas lets him know they track down Rose's vehicle toward the finish of the extension, yet it's vacant. Thomas likewise shares one of his officials is missing and he thinks she's with Rose, so he consents to assist Christopher with his hunt. In Quiet Slope, Sybil attempts to carry Rose to her station just to find this street likewise finishes in a void, affirming Quiet Slope is in the mist world, which is an alternate reality. Sybil chooses to return with Rose, expecting to track down a radio around. They see somebody moving close by, and when they attempt to follow, Sybil's radio and Rose's telephone begin making static commotions. At that point another beast shows up and Sybil takes out her weapon, however before she can shoot the beast tosses bubbling corrosive at her. Fortunately it falls on her head protector and she takes it off to then start shooting. While Sybil routs the beast, Rose utilizes the opportunity to run back to town. Following the guides on the transport signs, she explores the roads and tracks down the school from Sharon's drawing. As she heads inside, she sees a similar cross on the entryway. She comes to an office and snatches a bunch of keys in addition to a spotlight to proceed with her pursuit. In the city, Christopher and Thomas pass by on the squad car, utilizing the bullhorn to view as Rose. In any case, since they're in various real factors, they aren't heard. Thomas uncovers his dad used to claim the hairstyling salon and kicked the bucket during the fire in the underground mines, which made every one of local people leave the town. Certain individuals think this town merited its end. Back to Rose, she out of nowhere sees a bird inside an enclosure and a lot of excavators seem holding it. Rose attempts the entryways yet they're locked, so all things considered she goes through the patio and enters a consumed constructing. She conceals in a homeroom where she finds 2 new imprints on the residue, uncovering which composed all around the work area. Inside the work area, Rose finds a journal having a place with Alessa, which sets off a flashback showing every one of the understudies referring to the young lady as witch while ridiculing her and tossing things at her. At that point Rose sees a young lady run by and follows her higher up into a washroom, where she hears a young lady crying. Rose attempts each slow-down entryway and in the final remaining one, she's stunned to find the janitor's body enclosed by security fencing with a piece of a lodging keychain in his mouth. The wall says twofold challenge you with a bolt that focuses at the mouth, so Rose swallows back her revulsion and takes the key. At the point when she leaves the washroom, she sees the excavators coming, so she runs back and locks the entryway behind her. The excavators begin beating on the entryway, yet unexpectedly the bird moves agitated and the gathering takes off. Once more, then the alarm begins and the room is loaded up with obscurity. Rose utilizes the spotlight and sees how the washroom starts to spoil and obscure. The janitor emerges from the slow down and launches his blood on the wall. Rose begins running, discovering more bodies on her way. Down the stairs there are creepers covering each wall and going after the diggers. A shouting Rose takes one more hallway that is obstructed by a wall, so she circumvents the corner and is stunned to see as the consuming mine. She rapidly crosses an extension and admirers find an unpleasant-looking Alessa making more dull drawings before she tumbles off. Rose lands on the terrace, where she sees Pyramid Head before she takes off. At that point Thomas and Christopher show up at the school, strolling through a similar hall as Rose simultaneously, yet they don't see each other due to the various real factors. Christopher swears he felt Rose's presence and even smelled her aroma, however Thomas doesn't treat him in a serious way and drives him out. Rose implodes in tears as a multitude of creepers draws near, yet before they can hurt her she's hauled into one more space by Sybil. The cop steps on a creeper while holding the entryway close and Rose utilizes a metal bar to lock it. Sybil uncuffs Rose while making sense if she doesn't have numerous projectiles left. Abruptly Pyramid Head's cutting-edge blasts through the entryway and the pair avoids it without a moment to spare. Once more, he attempts and starts making the opening greater, permitting the creepers to get in. Then Pyramid Head arrives at inside to eliminate the bar, so Sybil shoots his arm. This doesn't stop him, but before he can come in every one of the dreadful things begin deteriorating. Pyramid Head vanishes and the school looks typical once more. Subsequently the pair consents to track down the inn from the keychain. In the interim Thomas makes Christopher pass on town and advises him to pass on this to the police. Anyway Christopher can perceive they're concealing something and calls the region documents to get some information about Quiet Slope, however they let him know it's arranged. That evening, Christopher trusts that the specialists will leave and breaks into the files. From Thomas's reports, he affirms the tale of the fire and finds an image of Dahlia's little girl Alessa, who closely resembles Sharon. On the opposite side, there's data about an instance of capturing and attack that occurred in room 111 of the lodging. In Quiet Slope, Rose and Sybil track down the inn and hear a lady shouting for help. They find Anna tossing stones at Dahlia while hollering things about confidence and destruction. The couple rapidly stops Anna and Dahlia takes off. Anna makes sense of Dahlia was projected out and calls her a delinquent. She likewise uncovers she's here searching for nourishment for the survivors that live in the congregation. Rose takes a blade from her while seeing the odd cross on the floor, and Anna explains it's the image of their confidence. Inside the post box for room 111, they track down one of Sharon's drawings, so they go searching for that room. They actually look at each entryway yet can't view as 111. There's a painting that Anna calls the principal consuming, which shows all the witch consuming this town did to fend murkiness off. Rose sees the composition coordinates Sharon's drawing and starts obliterating it with the blade, tracking down room 111 behind it. There's an opening in the wall and the ladies go through it to arrive at another structure, dropping the blade simultaneously. Unexpectedly, a young lady runs by and Rose follows her by hopping on some old garbage over an opening. She nearly falls, however rapidly recuperates and arrives at the young lady, who is Alessa. Rose gets some information about Sharon and Alessa answers by showing the flares on her arms that unexpectedly develop enormous. At the point when Rose squints, Alessa vanishes. Sybil tracks down her and tosses a rope to help her leap over the opening once more. Then, at that point, Rose shares her decision. It was Alessa who made them crash and directed them to this spot. While Sybil sees another cross, Anna asks them not to say Alessa's name. At that point, a lot of birds fly into a more healthy place and Anna declares they should leave since dimness is coming. The triplet goes through the roads as the alarm cries once more and they come to the congregation, which Rose perceives from the drawings as well. Out of nowhere, lots of survivors make an appearance to conceal in the congregation with the exception of Dahlia, who tells Sybil not to follow them in light of the fact that these individuals are controlling and deluding. Anna tosses a stone at Dahlia as she calls her a liar, yet Rose attempts to get data out of her in any case. Before long, the dimness begins assuming once again the position, so Sybil hauls Rose into the congregation. An enraged Anna stays to toss one more stone at Dahlia, however she's gotten by Pyramid Head, who rips her skin off and tosses it at the congregation's entryway. Inside, local people begin referring to Rose and Sybil as witches and attempt to push them out, ripping off Rose's memento. Sybil fires her firearm to make them ease off as the pioneer Christabella shows up to quiet her kin down, reminding them the Anna kicked the bucket since she defied the guidelines and not as a result of two outsiders. For the following couple of hours, Christabella and the gathering simply ask. In the meantime, Christopher visits the shelter where he embraced Sharon, yet the sister in control will not share any insights regarding the child's past. Christopher snaps and gets forceful, but he's interfered with by Thomas, who cuffs him for breaking and entering. Then Thomas makes sense of Alessa's past on the evening of the fire and that the faction that lives in Quiet Slope did horrendous things to her. He shows the consumed scars on his hands as he makes sense of certain sorts of equity depend on God prior to sending Christopher home, advising him to drop his pursuit or he'll wind up in prison. At the point when the haziness hours are over in Quiet Slope, Christabella at long last discussions to Rose and Sybil. She lets them know that an evil spirit controls the town and that Rose should confront it if she has any desire to track down Sharon, yet no one who attempted has at any point returned. Not entirely settled to do it at any rate, so Christabella and a few excavators take her and Sybil to the nearby medical clinic. She causes Rose to retain the guide while making sense of that this is the evil spirit space and that the obscurity lies in room B151. The diggers open an old lift and give Rose a spotlight. Christabella likewise returns her memento. Anyway, when she sees Sharon's face, she sees she seems to be Alessa and blames Rose for being a witch. She arranges the men to stop her, so Sybil battles them while driving Rose into the lift. Part of the gang arrives at inside and gets Rose by the hair, however Sybil cuts him down and shuts the entryway. Sadly, when she discharges her firearm there are no projectiles, so the diggers encompass her and mercilessly beat her up. Simultaneously, the lift goes down and Rose arrives at the storm cellar, where she discusses the headings she remembered to explore the halls. Unexpectedly, she finds a lot of dull medical caretakers who start to gradually push toward her, however they freeze when Rose switches off the electric lamp. She begins sneaking past them, which just works out positively for a couple of moments. The medical caretakers awaken and attempt to kill Rose, who evades their assaults and makes them hurt each other, all things being equal. Rose creeps to go through the gathering inconspicuous and abandons the electric lamp to keep them diverted. Then, at that point, she can run once more. At the point when Rose crosses the entryway of room B151, she hears Alessa's voice saying she'll be compensated with reality and a flashback starts. Alessa grew up without a dad and the strict local people passed judgment on her for being a jerk, which made different children call her a witch. Indeed, even the janitor was harmful toward her. Christabella persuaded Dahlia that Alessa could be purged and her faction accumulated at room 111 for the custom. Dahlia was crushed to find she had been lied as well, and Christabella planned to consume Alessa like a witch. Anyway, the gadget they utilized for the witch consuming broke down and lit the fire that obliterated the town. Dahlia attempted to protect her little girl, yet it was past the point of no return, and Thomas hurt his hands drawing out Alessa's scorched body. The young lady was kept in the clinic, where her aggravation took care of her displeasure. Ultimately, that outrage turned out to be sufficiently strong to show herself into a phantom, and she covered the town with dimness as vengeance. At the point when the flashback closes, Rose ends up in Alessa's medical clinic room. Her consumed body is still on the bed and her phantom shows up close to her old medical attendant. Alessa makes sense of that Sharon is the appearance of the little goodness that was left in her, and she deserted her in the rest of the world to safeguard her from the Quiet Slope revival. Christabella needs to sanitize Sharon as well, so Rose consents to assist Alessa with seeking her retribution. The apparition embraces her and enters her belly while it's uncovered the medical caretaker has been draining from her eyes such an extremely long time. In the meantime, it's uncovered that Sharon has been remaining in Dahlia's condo. Christabella shows up with her men and Sharon attempts to stow away while Dahlia shields her, however the folks are more grounded and effectively hijack them both in any case. Minutes after the fact, the religion is accumulated at the congregation, where Christabella lights a fire. Sybil has been restricted to a stepping stool and the gathering brings her barely enough down to keep her over the fire and consume her gradually. Before long her body bursts into flames and she passes on. Next the clique ties Sharon up as well, however before they bring down her, Rose shows up and begins sharing every bit of relevant information. Christabella's custom have never kept evil spirits under control, it really made one. A portion of the residents strike Rose as she strolls by, however she never surrenders and hollers that this confidence brings passing. Unexpectedly Christabella wounds Rose and calls her a blasphemer as she drops the blade. The blood trickles on the ground and permits Alessa to spread the murkiness inside the congregation, which used to be untouchable for her. Local people turn on their electric lamps and watch how dimness spills out of Rose's injury, which decays the floor to uncover the consuming mines. As Rose's injury recuperates itself, a lot of spike metal raises starting from the earliest stage raise that consumed Alessa on her bed. Those wires get Christabella and go up her crotch to then burst out through her paunch, killing her prior to parting her body in two. Then the wires begin killing all the religion individuals, including the person that is going to go after Rose. While Dahlia respects what her girl has become, Rose saves Sharon and takes her to a corner, where the young lady sees Phantom Alessa approach her prior to dropping. Minutes after the fact, daylight enters the congregation, which is presently perfect and void aside from Dahlia, Rose, and Sharon. Dahlia asks why Alessa didn't kill her and Rose makes sense of a mother is God according to her kid. Then she and Sharon return to her vehicle, where Sharon at last nods off without having any bad dreams. Rose drives while calling her home to leave a message, which shows up with just static. In the city, Christopher is having a rest, however awakens when he detects somebody close by. Simultaneously Rose and Sharon show up at the house. Anyway, when Christopher goes outside he tracks down no one, yet his family is inside the house. This implies Rose and Sharon are still in the haze world since no one at any point genuinely leaves Quiet Slope.